Do you ever wonder why all of those dystopian movies have come out over the last 10 years? Do you ever wonder why people have been talking about so much unrest? Well, the truth is the 2020 crisis is one that you could have set your watch by. Now, I don't think anybody could have told you what was going to happen over the last 4 months in detail, but you just knew it, didn't you? You just felt it coming along. And I'm going to look you in the eye and tell you that I know that that feels like bad news. I know that it feels difficult. It's like the entire world is in a state of unrest, but for you as a business owner, the truth is that the door just opened wide for the world to hear your message, to connect with your products, to invest in more of your services. And in just a moment, I'm going to explain exactly why, but for right now, let me just say welcome back to EdTalks Live. I'm like a kid in a candy shop here. I've been like so excited. It's only been 2 weeks. I mean, it's only been 2 weeks. For those of you who are joining us online right now, we just took a break so that I could go finish teaching our Ultimate Speaker course with my with my Ultimate Speaker community, many of whom are sitting in chat right now. But you know, we took 2 weeks off. We just decided, you know, we're going to take a couple weeks off, go inside the membership portal, do some training, and come back. We took 2 weeks off and the whole world turned upside down. And I know the media is blaming the fact that we haven't had EdTalks Live. I mean, they're saying, look, Ed, you have the most positive place on the planet for insanely implementable ideas, and then you stopped. I mean, no wonder the world went so crazy. I'm kidding, but only partially. Today I'm going to talk about the opportunities that are in front of you as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. And let me just put it as bluntly as I can. If you don't solve the problem, no one will. If you don't get into the niche that you're supposed to be in, no one will get there. There's no plan B. There's no backup plan. If you don't make it to the place that God has destined for you, no one's going to be there. In fact, someone will be there, but it will be somebody who's going to be leading your ideal customer and your ideal market astray. And so I want to welcome you back. Thanks for jumping back into the show. If you haven't had a chance, jump into chat on Facebook. That's below you on the right-hand side here on YouTube. Just jump in and tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do. You know, it's not a day or two go by that I don't get an email from somebody who says, hey, Ed, I've been watching all your EdTalks Live shows, and I've never seen that person's name before. And I love the emails, by the way, so send me the emails. But jump in and say hello and become part of our amazing community. Listen, there are people just to your right with abundance-minded, heart-centered approaches to business that really want to help you too. And this community, I think, is going to be responsible for flat out changing the world. So jump in and say hello. I want to jump in and say hello to some of my friends here in chat. What's up, Barry? Good to see you. Welcome back. Oh, hang on a second. I want to get rid of this little branding here below me. Welcome back to the show. Good to see you as well, my friend. Dennis, welcome back is good. Hello, Linda. Happy Monday to you as well. Hello, Mr. Bugs. Good to see you, buddy. Jim Butts. Jim says, I hope everybody's recovered from the Ultimate Speaker. Man, I slept a lot this weekend. Dr. Wendy Lee, good to see you as well. I got your email this morning, by the way. Will we ever be the same? I know I won't. Diana, good to see you as well. I like this, by the way. When I was looking at chat before the show started, I like the term ultimate speech. It's one that I probably should have been using. I like that a lot. Let's see. Ron, welcome back. Ready to quench my thirst for knowledge. Hey, what's up, David Satz? Talking to you today, too. Hey, Mike, welcome back to the show. Good to see you, Matt Head. I like this. How to pivot without traveling. There's a basketball. For those of you who don't know, one of my businesses, I work with basketball referees. So there's a basketball thing in there, too. Tomorrow, Ed will... So Mike Semmel, if y'all don't know Mike, so Mike's been in my coaching and mastermind for several years, and I started to sit next to Mike at the mastermind sessions that I'm leading. And the reason why is because every once in a while Mike Semmel will just have this hysterical, sarcastic comment. So I just want to be right next to it when he does it. Hey, Arthur, welcome back. Salee as well, good to see you. No turtles, I love it. There's a reference to 21 Day Miracle. Hey, Bruce, good to see you as well. Hey, Chris, what's up, dude? Welcome back. David, good to see you. Michael, talking to you today or tomorrow? I think tomorrow. Yeah, it's really good. David's a basketball referee, by the way, so you guys have that in common. All right, so welcome back, everybody. I'm so glad to be here. I've got a week planned for you. We are going to roll up our sleeves this week. And by the way, welcome back to the most positive place on the planet for insanely implementable ideas. We're going to do it. I'm just telling you, we're going to do it. So today, I'm going to be covering a concept called the big pivot, how to exploit a time-sensitive global loophole to grow your income. We are going to spend the next 3 weeks thematically on this concept of this big shift that you're going to take as a business owner to create more value in the world, to connect better with your customers, to make more money, and to have a whole lot more fun. Now, the reason why I stopped right there for that whole make more money thing is very simple. We live in a world that, to put it lightly, despises and to put it mildly, is disgusted by the idea of profit or you creating a revenue stream. I'll tell you that's not been the history of the world for the at least 6,000 years of written history. Probably up until about maybe 100 or 200 years ago, it was actually historically viewed, if somebody had wealth, they were viewed by their community and their society as someone who must have been extremely righteous for them to have received. It was completely opposite. Let me just tell you that. I'm not saying they're right, and I'm not necessarily saying we're wrong, but what I am telling you is that if you want to begin to change the world, and I certainly do, one of the biggest ways that you can do that is to make and keep money. I mean, think about it right now. If you had $50 billion, could you make a difference in the world right now and make a change in this environment? Or let me ask you this. If you owned a social media company like YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn, could you make a difference? You could. But right now, none of us owns Facebook or LinkedIn, or maybe you are watching if you are right now. And none of us has $50 billion, but I'd like to see that happen. I'd like to see this community of people move so fast and so furious into the place that you're supposed to be, that you create the kind of wealth in the world that you want to. Because the truth is, there's actually 4 types of people. And let me jump up on the board and go here real quick, because I think this is actually an important place to start. In a moment, I'm going to be showing you some things online, and say this before, but it's worth repeating. You know, there's 4 types of people in the world. I always thought there were 2. You know, growing up in a family that was not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, when I was younger, we didn't really have barely any money at all. As I grew up, actually, both of my parents became successful. My mom was an entrepreneur. My dad became a very well-known basketball referee. But when I was younger, I remember at one point we were living in like a little RV next to some river in Pennsylvania. I mean, it was like, it was slim pickings at that point. And again, my parents both became very successful as they grew up. But as I was there, what I realized is, you know, the media and the world would like to tell you that there's 2 types of people, right? There are good, poor people, and there are evil, rich people. If you look at the media, for example, like movies, you can't think of an example of a billionaire in a movie who's actually fits into the good, rich category. There's like none. Every one of them who are presented as billionaires in movies have to go through some transformation where they're like, you know, the money's not that important. Okay, that's like the whole goal of the movie. But what I learned from studying, actually, if some of you remember this, but I learned this from studying actually the book of Proverbs. I went through the book of Proverbs, which is this old ancient book of wisdom and literature, and I went through there and I put a little dot next to every single verse in that book that talked about wealth, poverty, riches, lack, want, need, wisdom. All those things I started putting a dot next to. And what I realized was that there's actually 2 categories, or 4 categories. If you put good and evil across the top, and if you put rich and poor across the left-hand side, and you create 4 categories, you realize that there's good rich people, there's evil rich people. Remember some of the social media that I was mentioning? There's good poor people, and there's evil poor people. Now, this particular category I had an issue with, right? Because when you look at somebody who's in poverty, you're like, wait a second, how is it possible that there's evil poor people? That doesn't sound like anything that I've ever read in any social justice article or anything like that. And then all of a sudden that you realize there are actually people in the world who have taken upon themselves to put the responsibility of their upkeep on everyone else. There's able-bodied people we have here in San Diego, right down maybe a mile or 2 away from me. We have this whole homeless community. And there's dudes that are standing out there on the streets asking for money. And I'm just looking at them and I'm like, dude, you could, able-bodied, able-minded, okay? And I think, so poverty should be a temporary state before moving up into this category. This is very, 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 very simple to say. So if someone's stuck here and they're stuck there because they're unwilling to work, actually the best thing for them is to experience their lack and their need to motivate them to work, okay? So there are times, by the way, where, not all the time, where us giving someone a hand out is the wrong step. Instead, we should be giving people a hand up, okay? Getting them into a work environment where they can labor and then they can feel the blessings of receiving what they earned, okay? So there was category number 4, but then I also realized there's category number 3. There are truly good poor people that don't have resources but have great hearts, want to serve the world, okay? And this should be a temporary spot for most people, right? Now, the world is not designed like this. I'm going to explain this in just a second. The world's not designed for this to happen, and I'm going to show you how we can fix this. But then there also are these evil rich people, right? And what I realized is there's good people and there's evil people. That's just the way that it is. And so wealth turns into becoming a magnifier. If you're an awful person, wealth you'll be more awful, okay? And if you're generally a good person with a good heart, want to change the world, this wealth will magnify your ability to do that because wealth is simply nothing more than a magnifying glass of who you are. In fact, in certain cases, I believe it can be a reflection of who you are. If you're creating great value in the world, you're receiving the compensation on that value, then you turn into this. And so what I started to realize was, all things being equal, I'll go for number 1. I'll be the good rich person, because if I'm going to be one of the two, I already know that I'm going to be here, okay? So if I'm going to be one of these two, I'd rather be the good rich than the good poor, because at least you can go shopping, okay? Pay the bills and all that kind of stuff. So let's start there. Now, the world has created a narrative where that doesn't exist, okay? And so what ends up happening, if the world creates a narrative where it's not, those two things don't exist, here's what ends up happening. Good people who believe the evil rich, good poor, two-person narrative. The people that believe that, what happens is you turn into what I call a way station for money. It's impossible for you, when you believe at a subconscious core level that money is the root of all evil, which you'll hear people say, which is not from the Bible, by the way. Okay, so people always quote that like it's from the Bible, but it's not. Okay, so people who believe in their subconscious, money is the root of all evil, they turn into way stations for money, because your subconscious will do everything it can to align your belief systems and the world together. And when it does that, what it does is it forces you to get rid of your money, so that all of a sudden you realize, I've been making money, but I haven't kept any of the money. I'm not sure where any of it went. That's because your subconscious is in a belief system where there are two types of wealth, okay? Now, the second thing that's happened globally, this is important, this whole setup is important to show you what's going to happen in the next 5 years, and I'll get to this in just a second. Now, the second thing that's happened is, over the last, I'd say maybe 50 to 60 years, out to about 80 years, is the deck has been stacked against you, okay? So, if you've been feeling, man, it's hard to make money, and if you've been feeling like, man, it's hard to keep money, and if you've been feeling like, gosh, it just feels to me like all of the global forces are against me, if you've been feeling that way, you've been feeling that way because it's true. The deck is stacked against you. Now, again, I know that this all sounds like super doom and gloom, okay? And I know it sounds like you're like, geez, Ed, like, is there any good news? Yes, I'm going to bring you the good news here in just a second, because I'm going to tell you what to do about it. I'm going to tell you that the opportunity just opened up for you to create the kind of wealth that you want. I'm going to get there in just a second, okay? But let me start here by simply just saying that the deck is stacked against you. And here's why, okay? You have a government that was designed to be of the people, for the people, and by the people. Okay, very simple, right? Quote from Mr. Abraham Lincoln, all right, 16th president, 1860. So that was the way that the government was created. The government was simply there to help create a situation that was peaceful and had the opportunity for abundance, okay? So for example, it wasn't until the early 1900s that we here in America had our first income tax. Think about that for a second. It wasn't until our country had been in existence for almost 140 years that we had our very first tax on income. That was never, ever part of the plan, okay? The way that the central government received money for that first 140 years was generally on tariffs of goods that were imported or exported. That was basically the way the government got their money. And you're like, wait a second, how did they even have enough money to do what they needed to do? Well, the truth was they didn't have much, okay? So if you looked, for example, at President Lincoln and his cabinet, it was like 7 people, you know? Nowadays, the executive branch is hundreds of thousands of people. So they were forced to do more with less, just like you are, okay? So what I'm here to tell you, though, is like I said, the deck is stacked against you. Here's what happens. When you create wealth, when you as an entrepreneur make money, if you're familiar with the way our taxation system is the better you do, the more they take, okay? And when I say take, I could insert the word steal if you really wanted me to. There are times when you as an entrepreneur, I've had this happen to me, where my effective tax rate on a certain really good year was above 50%, okay? I want you to think about that for a second. That means the government's saying, hey, look, you need to work for January, February, March, April, May, June for us, and then the rest you have to keep. Okay, now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't give the government money, because the government does need some money to do some of the things that they do. But here's what I am saying. The last time I checked, the church, you know what the tithe is? Tithe is short for 10%. Right? So if you look at the average, when you look through the Old Testament, when they talk about the tithe, what they used to give to their churches, that was 10%. So you have the church that's about 10%, and you have the federal government that's up to 50%, which is basically the federal government saying that they're 5 times more needful and influential than God. Now think about that for a second, okay? That's why one of my objectives in our country is to take the effective tax rate down below 10%, actually right about there. More on that to come, okay? But I actually think that's a more equitable number. Of course, that you ought to pay taxes to whom taxes are due, but that's not tax, that's robbery, okay? And if you look, for example, it's not just income tax. There's about 200 different taxes that you get hit on, from everything from registering your car all the way to what happens when you get a ticket, okay? Now, this is what happens when you make money. When you're not making money, what happens is, so when you're making money, you are making money so that you can put this into the powers that be so that they can give money off to the people who they consider their friends. And the people that are considered I'm totally off my notes, by the way, but we need to cover this, okay? The people that they consider their friends are the same people who this is when you're doing well, okay? When you're doing well, you're getting debilitated, not debilitated completely, but you're getting slowed down, because the better you do, the more you have to give away. They have to take, steal, okay? But when you're not doing well, that's when you need to get resources and funds into your business. Well, guess what? Who gives you that, okay? When you're not doing well, what you end up having to do is take out loans or line of credits, and who gives you that? At interest, okay? So remember when I said that the deck is stacked against you. That said, okay, there's a couple more pieces of bad news, then I'm going to get to the good news. All right, you saw this, right? And again, you can disagree with me if you want to. This is not coming down from Sinai, all right? So if you want to disagree, you can. I'm just telling you the way that the world works. Okay, now, all of a sudden, this fall, 4 forces came flying into the arena at exactly the same time, okay? So if you've been feeling like, oh my goodness, like if you've had this feel, I don't know if I feel almost like tangible in my body. I've had this feeling like, you can almost feel sort of almost like the global unrest, almost like this force pushing down on you, okay? If you've been feeling this is because it's true. And I'm here to tell you that there's forces that have all combined to create a certain scenario and situation in the world. By the way, if you just joined us, because I saw a whole bunch of you just joined us, my name's Ed Rush. This is a show called The Big Pivot, how to exploit a time-sensitive global loophole to grow your income. And I'm going to be showing you how to take advantage, to exploit. I use that word on purpose, by the way. I know some people like say exploit. Yes, yes. The global, the entire world, the deck has been stacked against you. And now for the very first time, there's a window that's going to open up for you, and it's your turn to jump through it. Okay, because if you don't, it's going to go back to the way it was. All right, now, there are 4 things that have combined that all of a sudden like jumped into the ring almost all simultaneously at the exact same time, which I think is the same thing, simultaneously at the exact same time, okay? They all jumped into the ring at the same time, and when they did that, there wasn't room for all 4. And so the pressure cooker, the lid popped off of the pressure cooker, okay? So the first force that came in was government control. I don't know where you are on the issues, but I really haven't met many people who are like, you know, the government needs to have more control, okay? Because it seems to me every time they put more control in, they mess it up, okay? And part of the reason, by the way, is because most of these people have never run a business. It's important to think about that. Most of the legislation that's coming out of Washington, out of state capitals, is from people who have no clue, who've never run a business. Maybe they were like part of a school board or something like that. Nothing wrong with school boards, but don't be making business legislation if you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so the first one is excessive government control. The second one is a massive explosion of the fake. I can get to that a little bit later on, but this is important for me to just kind of be brief about this. The world used to get their news from Walter Cronkite. The world then got their news from the nightly news. Then the world got their news from CNN, 1991. Right after the Gulf War, CNN became really popular because of 24-hour news. At that point, then it was CNN and Fox News, and what happened when those 2 businesses came in was the world completely separated. When the world separated, what happened is Americans began to look at the news, and they looked on one side and the other, and if you're like me, you're like, whoa, 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 what? And all of a sudden you realize nobody's telling you the truth. They're not. They're telling you their version of the truth so that you can click on the things on their website and they can drive ad revenue, okay? And that's not only just at the news agencies, this is happening here too, right? I mean, you've had verified, documented cases where senators or congressmen and women would stand in front of a camera and literally say something that was completely false, and they knew it was false. And later on, you start reading the documentation, and you're like, wait a second, they knew this was false, but they stood in front of the American people and lied? That's like treasonous, in my opinion. But we let them get away with it because we live in a world that's inundated by fake. That's the second global force that hit. The third global force was unrest. Okay, more of this was actually a result. And then the fourth one is the economic side. Okay, and I'm going to get to the economic side and just go a little bit deeper on this in just a second. But it's important to hang here for just a second and just say, when these 4 things converged, they converged exactly at an 80-year point that was predictable enough to know that when they converged, the top was going to come off of the top, and all of a sudden things were going to go crazy, okay? And in a minute, I'm going to show you how to take advantage of it. And not just in a minute, I'm going to be talking about this for the next 3 weeks. Some of you know this, by the way, and if you don't, I'm doing an event. My thing is up over my head. Here, I'll move over here. I'm doing an event. You can see the website below, bigpivotevent.com. I'll pull it up. You can see it. That's it right there. And the headline on this website says, the 2020 crisis has created a massive opportunity that occurs only once every 80 years. Give me 3 days and I'll show you how to exploit it for more profit, more peace of mind, and more freedom than ever before. Tomorrow, I'm going to do a segment on how to connect with your customer and copyright, and I'm going to be talking about some of the things that are on this website. Even if you don't want to come to this event, go to this website, read every word, because it's a good lesson in marketing. And by the way, it's a good deal and a good investment, and you can watch it at home if you want to. I'd recommend, if you can, come to Dallas for the live event. We're actually doing a live event. But if you can, come to Dallas. Website's right below, bigpivotevent.com. Now, really quickly, I'm going to jump back into to chat. Say hello. If you haven't had a chance to jump into chat, say hello. What's up, Mark? Good to see you, buddy. Welcome to the show. David, 50 billion. That's what I'm talking about, dude. No joke. Hi, Lucy. Welcome. Good to see you as well. That's right. Money magnifies. That's exactly right. Good. Hey, what's up, Marquetta? Good to see you as well. Did I write fiends? Yeah. Oh, I get it. They give it to their fiends. Yeah, okay. Sometimes, Barry, it takes me a second to get the joke. I like that. Harisha, good to see you as well. Welcome back. Fake food. Now you got that right too. He's right. He's right. He's right. All right. So these four forces all combined, and again, you could have predicted this if you wanted to. The reason why, I'm going to do the quick history lesson. Some of you have heard me do this before, and if you have, it'll be helpful to see this because there's one additional thing you're going to learn in this. If you haven't seen it, it's very important. I'm going to do it fairly quickly, okay? Because we need to get to the what you're going to do about it. And again, I'm going to be covering what you're going to do about it over the next 3 weeks on the show. By the way, tomorrow's show is called Copywriting 401: How to Engage Your Audience and Get More Yeses. It's a continuing, believe it or not, it's a continuing discussion of what we're talking about right now. You'll see what I mean in just a second, because in a moment I'm going to take you through the customer journey, what that looks like and what changed. Okay. The second thing is on Wednesday, I've got my friend Jonathan Kronstadt coming in. The online product world just exploded. To be fully transparent, the online product world was dead on the vine a year ago. I mean, I wasn't selling stuff online autonomously, barely at all. And then all of a sudden in February, really in March of this year, it totally took off. I've sold more online products, courses, and memberships in the last 2 months than I have in the last 2 years. Think about that for a second. So on Wednesday, Jonathan's going to come in. Jonathan is the president of a website called Kajabi, which is what I use for all my membership stuff. So if you're interested in, Kajabi does lead generation, CRM as well. So if some of you have been asking CRM questions, this will be a great show for you, okay? So back to the point. Those four forces all of a sudden conjoined. I don't know if that's a real word. It sounds like it's an awesome word. Those four forces conjoined to create what we're seeing today. Now, it could have resulted in a war, in a revolution. It might, by the way. It could have been a pandemic. It doesn't matter. It does, but it doesn't matter what popped the lid off finally. It was simply predictable. Okay, let me just explain what I'm talking about. American Revolution back in 1776 went to 1781 roughly. Those are the years that of the conflict. If you look at the time frame here, it was essentially 5 years of national unrest. We were not the only ones going through that. The French were about to go through their revolution. There were other countries in the world where the top of the pop was beginning to pop off. Okay, so now if you go forward about 80 years, you get into 1860. If you're familiar with what happened in 1860, that's when we began the American Civil War. American Civil War went from 1860 to 1865, roughly about a 5-year time period. It started basically when Lincoln was elected, and it ended right before he was assassinated. So if you look at the time window, again, right about 5 years of national uncertainty, but global uncertainty too. The Brits were at war in New Zealand at the time. Darwin had just written Origin of the Species, really turning the world upside down in terms of scientific belief. So you see this big shift happen right here. I'm going to get a little bit deeper on this in just a second. Jump forward to 1940 to 1945. You have to be a stranger of history to know that this is the World War, right? So not only in Europe, which is completely becoming decimated at this point, but also in the Far East with a war in Japan, a 5-year period of unrest followed by a long period of stability, okay? It's significant to note, by the way, that the pressurization and the bubbling up of the unrest was leading into this. So you had this period of time, maybe 10, 15 years. If you read, for example, Lincoln's biographies, you'll see that there was this sense in the nation where you could just feel it coming. Several years before 1860 was John Brown's raid, which was really one of the first military actions on behalf of the abolitionists. A little untimely because he didn't have the forces behind him, okay, but still you could start to feel some of this stuff happening. And then all of a sudden, if you go 80 years forward, here we are. Okay, now, again, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, but I don't have time to go like super deep on this. This is 80 years. This is 80 years. This is 80 years. And what I'm telling you is that this happens every 80 years. So if you're alive in 2100, you can expect something of the same to happen. And for good news, for good reasons and bad reasons. By the way, sometimes what this is nothing more than just a nice spring cleaning. It's the way that the world gets rid of some things that start to crust over. Let me give you an example. I was talking about taxation. People always go, what are you going to do about taxation? Because fundamentally, governments that tax their people, so when they started the income tax back in the early 1900s, they said, look, this is temporary. This is just going to be a 1%. I think it was less than 1%. It was like 0.8%. It's temporary. It's 0.8%. It's not that much. It's going to be fine. We're going to take it away, because we're going to take it away because it's temporary. And everybody's like, well, I mean, if it's temporary, sure. Why not? Guess what? It wasn't temporary, okay? Because you can't get toothpaste back into the tube. The way that you get toothpaste back into the tube is you global revolution, okay? And I'm not saying we're going to have a bloody revolution in our country. What I'm saying is what we're seeing is a revolution, okay? Every 80 years, boom, 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 energy unrest, energy unrest, energy unrest. Now, I know this sounds like it's all bad news, but I'm going to get to the good news, okay? The last bit of this added on to this is the economic setup. Now, we haven't seen much in the media talking about what's coming economically, okay? This pandemic thing hit. Everybody was like, wait a second, well, we got to be at home for a couple months. The government's like, don't worry about it because we're just going to send you checks. And if you have a business, we're going to pay your business bills. And you're like, wait a second, where are you going to get that money from? Well, guess what? They're going to get it from you. Okay, so don't worry about it. You're going to pay for all of it. You're going to pay. You think that their friends are going to pay for it? No, you are. Okay, we are. Hopefully not. More to come on that. Okay, but simultaneous to this, and again, I'm going to get to the good news just a second. So hang with me. Okay, simultaneous to this, you have coming into February of 2020, the highest level of corporate debt in the history of our country, over $1 trillion. The highest level of consumer debt in our country, well over $1 trillion. A renewed housing bubble, a student loan bubble, okay? Everything is over leveraged, including a stock market with price to earnings ratios higher than they've ever been. Essentially what that means is overvalued everything, while at the same time over leveraged anything. And I don't have time to do an economics lesson other than to say, overvalued and over leveraged is a problem. What that means is, let's say your house is worth $500,000, but on paper, Zillow's saying that it's worth $800,000. So you borrow $800,000 because that's what you think your house is worth, and then all of a sudden the market corrects and goes back to $500,000, and now you have to short sell your house. That's a simple explanation of the entirety of our global economic scheme right now. Okay, just that right there. Just assume that everyone's borrowed out to $800,000, but their actual house is only worth $500,000. And that's the fourth force. Remember I said government control, fake, unrest, and economic. We've seen the first three show their head, right? The first three have demonstrated that. What I'm here to tell you is that in my best estimation, the next 5 here is a economic challenge in our country. There is simply the market forces that will come to bear on the situation that we've created. All of it on a global scale, I already told you, is bad news. But for you, as an entrepreneur, this happens to be great news. Okay, now, I'm gonna pause there for a second. I'm not saying that I'm glad it happened. I'm not saying, oh man, it's can't wait to see all those people. I'm not saying that. Suffer, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that you have a brain on your shoulders, and you have a business, and you have a message, and you have a responsibility, because the world that we have in 2025, the one that we come out of this with, is the world that you will create. It's the world that you and I will create. There were more millionaires created back during the Great Depression than at any other time in our human history. Think about that for a second. What that means is that now is an opportunity, and you can go in one of two directions. You can be a victim. If you look at what I just said right there and you're like, I can't do it, and then you become a victim, okay? Then that's the kind of person, a victim is the kind of person that's gonna borrow more, it's gonna work less, that's gonna just say, I give up. Okay, that's what a victim does. Well, we've had too many victims. All right, here's what a victor does. You have a choice. You can be a victim or a victor. A victor goes, all right, fine. How do I adjust now? How do I adjust now? How do I adjust now? And I'm going to tell you that over the next 5 years, you are going to have to make about 1 million micro adjustments. And that's maybe a conservative number. The world will be so fluid in the next 5 years that you are going to need to stay plugged in and micro adjust. That's why it's so great that you're here, okay? I'd love to be able to help you take this journey over the next 5 years to show you the small micro adjustments that are going to be required of you during the next 5 years, okay? Look, I would rather that it wasn't like this. I'd rather that it was just peace and prosperity, but the truth is, these situation for peace and prosperity have not been created. It's been the opposite. And for the kind of changes that we need to see in our world and in our government, we have to go through some of these difficult times. What are some of the changes that we need to see? I have a couple in mind. How about something like economic equity? In other words, a taxation system that values both the producer and also the people who are being helped by the producer. How about a world where we have racial equity? I mean, we've talked about that together on this show. A place where, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, people are judged by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin, okay? A place where there is true wage equity. Take that, for example, where a person is compensated based on the value that they provide, not because of the years that they worked, not because of the long time that they've been around, not because of how old or how young they are, but based on the value that they actually provide. We have an opportunity as entrepreneurs to create health economy, like health equity, right? Where people get the same great access to organic food and great holistic treatments that everyone does. I mean, we have an opportunity to create something amazing over the next 5 years, and we can do it. I'm telling you, there's right now, maybe like 40 people, 45 people, something like that, right now on. If you include Facebook, I'm just looking at the numbers, include Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, in a year there should be 500,000 people, okay, watching together as we're talking about this, because I'm telling you that the world's going to change, okay? So over the next few weeks, I'm going to be talking about the opportunity that's presented to you. And you're going to hear me discuss this a few more times. Every time it's going to be a little bit different, as you just noticed on that, okay? But we're going to talk together about how to rapidly pivot and adjust, because fundamentally, here is the number one premise that I'm going to be leveraging my whole business on and betting the farm on. This premise. Over the last 10 years, the marketplace that you're communicating to has become more and more and more and more and more asleep and therefore resistant to your marketing message. So if you've been advertising on Facebook like I have, or you've been advertising on Google like I used to do, or actually still do now, if you've been trying to get your marketing message out there through speaking, if you've been trying to connect with your market over the last 10 years, I mean, I've been marketing, I left the Marine Corps back in 2006. I've been marketing businesses ever since then. And I'll tell you, in 2006, 2007, 2008, it was 10 times easier than it was back in 2019. It was so much easier to get in front of your market and to get them engaged. And over the last 10 years, it's almost like in the movie Alice in Wonderland, where she just starts to fall asleep, you know? It's almost like in that movie where everybody just starts to fall asleep, because times were so certain. I mean, the stock market was on its way up, the equity market was on its way up, the bond market was on its way up, businesses were growing, house values were going up. Everyone started to feel so amazing. And all of a sudden, they just kind of got into their little hypnotism. Meanwhile, you may have been trying to start a business in between 2009 and 2019, and things got started, and then you're like, what's the deal, man? I put this stuff out, and I get like 2 likes, you know? I used to get 200 likes, and now I'm getting 2 likes. What the heck is going on? Because everyone started to fall asleep. Because in times of certainty, people get complacent. And they got complacent. And they got complacent while all the world's evil forces were at work, and then bam, all of them hit at the exact same time. And in February of 2020, the entire world just went like this. It's like they just woke up, okay? Have you ever seen someone like for real, get knocked out. I'm talking like I mean, I was at a bar. This isn't recent. This is like when I was back in flying airplanes. I was probably 23, 24. I remember watching a dude get knocked out. I wasn't the guy doing the knocking out, okay? I remember watching a guy get knocked out outside of a bar. So there's a guy that I knew. There's this guy that I knew. He must not have been more than 5'5", little skinny guy. He's an actor in Hollywood now, and his name was Chris Curson. I'm gonna say his name because this will help you. And he was like a 10th, 8th level black belt in karate. He was a badass. Okay, so we're all sitting at this bar one day, and this huge guy walks up to him and says, "This is exactly what he said." So this is my words. This is him. He said, "This is the guy whose ass I'm kicking tonight." Of all the people this drunk football player could have picked, it was the karate black belt, okay? So this kid's like, my friend's like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, you and me." And he's like, "Okay." I've never seen someone get knocked out so fast, okay? I'm talking like, you ever seen someone for real get knocked out? It's not like in the movies. I'm talking like their knees buckle and their body crumples, boom, right down to the ground. Now, what happens about 10 seconds later, if you see this, what happens about 10 seconds later is the brain is like, does its rebooting. You know, when your computer reboots and it's like, wong, and the screen comes up and then it starts to get, about 10 seconds after you get knocked out, the brain starts to reboot, okay? And when the brain reboots, it like, you know how the window pops up and says, do you want to restore the window that was closed? You're like, yep, restore the window. Well, the brain's like, do you want to restore the window? Yeah, let's do that. So what happens is sometimes your brain thinks like, I'm still in a fight. And I kid you not, this 300-pound football player is laying on his back like punching into the air. It's his fault, by the way. So here's the thing. In February of 2020, the whole world just started punching at the air because all of a sudden they realized they had been knocked out, okay? In that moment, people get up, breathe some fresh air, figure out like what's gonna happen, okay? You could have predicted last March, you saw the 4 stages of grief, right? Denial, acceptance, you know, I mean, they're going through everything, and then all of a sudden, like right in the middle of March, towards the end of March, everyone's like, all right, it's time to get busy, man. It's time to start doing something about it. And in that moment, literally, my business went wow, like that in that exact moment. And I'm telling you, they're there for you too. Facebook just got easier if you want to advertise there. YouTube just got easier if you want to advertise there. Your website should be converting better right now. It should be easier to sell online products. It has been for me. It should be easier to get people to enroll for online events. You should get more engagement on your online videos. You should be able to get more people to open and click your emails. That's certainly been the case for me. You should be able to get more people to write comments on your videos or on your Facebook posts. You should see that more people are responding to your Instagram posts or in certain cases your Instagram ads. I personally saw that ad costs went down while at the same time response rate went up, okay? And that's all because back in February, the whole world just came out of their hypnotism, okay? So in about 5 minutes, I'm just gonna take your questions and then we're gonna wrap up the show. But over the next, like I said, next 2 or 3 weeks, we're gonna be talking about how this process begins to unfold. And tomorrow, I'm gonna talk about it from the customer's journey perspective, right? There's basically 6 ways that customers are made. So, how customers are made. There's 6 ways six ways that a customer, it's really a customer journey, right? You've got traffic. Grab a pen and write this down. You've got leads. Leads are people who give you their email address, give you their business card, give you their phone number, say, hey, could you give me a call, or walk into your store. Someone becomes a customer. Difference between a lead and a customer is they pay you. So there's a credit card that comes along with this, or cash, or a transaction, right? Then there's lifetime customers, which is a huge, gigantic, and very important leap. This is a person who doesn't just pay you once. It's a person who pays you, pays you, pays you, pays you, pays you, pays you. This, by the way, is how you build a business. So some of you watching right now on the show have been working with me in several different programs over the years. Okay, that's what you get when you create trust, right? Then you've got referrals, and you've got reviews. People who give you reviews on your Amazon book, reviews online. Here's the customer journey. Well, over the last 6 months, nothing changed. That's still the customer journey. People still see you. They opt in some way. They pay you. They become lifetime customers, okay? So the fundamentals, this is important for me to say this, the fundamentals of marketing have stayed the same. The same. The fundamentals, like tomorrow I'm going to talk about copywriting. I'm going to talk about this customer journey, how to bring someone through this customer journey. Those fundamentals have remained the same. But 2 things have happened. Okay, so number 1 is it's been amplified. Remember I said if you give a evil person money, it's going to amplify. It's like a magnifying glass, going to make them worse. And I said if you give a good person money, it's going to be magnified like an amplifying glass, amplified like a magnifying glass that's going to make them better. Well, what happened was this entire process, when the world woke back up again, it just became amplified. It was almost like there were 340 million people in the United States, but maybe only about 20 million of them were paying attention. And now 335 million of them are paying attention, right? So even though the population didn't change, their response, ability to respond changed. So number 1, it amplified. And number 2, okay, the fundamentals remain the same, but the mechanics have changed. Okay, so how you do it, like for example, how we got leads back in 2008, it's a lot different now than how we get leads in 2020, way different. Another example, back in 2008 when we were marketing, not even that long ago, the journey between lead and customer, there used to be this running theory back when I first started marketing that you would just load someone up with content for a long time. Content, and then eventually you'd get an offer in front of them. I'll tell you that we used to do this. It used to take us about 7 days of just really building the person with content before we made an offer. This went down to about 0 minutes, okay, in the last year. I'm gonna tell you, getting your offers in front of your customers faster is working now, okay? So there's something that changed, right? So what happened was this whole process, number 1 was amplified, and number 2, the mechanics changed. I'm gonna be teaching you this process in more depth, but I'm also gonna be teaching you what changed. What changed? Let me give you an example. I'm gonna show you a page. I'll show you this again. But I'm gonna show, this is one of my best opt-in pages. You can get this, by the way, if you go to edrush.com, nope, not that one. Well, I guess I don't have it on there. Bummer. It's actually edrush.com/freebook is that website. I must have deleted it. But anyway, when you go to edrush.com/freebook, you can actually see this page that I've got that's sitting right up in here. It used to be that you used to put a lot of stuff on this page. Testimonials, a bunch of copy. I started testing this and realized the smaller this page, the better it converted. This page is converting over 50% right now. Okay. All right. So that's really good, by the way. To cold traffic. Because the fundamentals remain the same. You get traffic, you get a lead. But the mechanics of how you do that have completely changed. And they've changed, one, because the market changes and it naturally changes. But it changed also because the world, like I said, just became awake and aware. So, quick summary, then I'm going to jump down and take any of your questions and comments, and then begin to wrap up today's show. The world changed. You know that. In fact, you could almost feel it was coming. Like I said in the opening, all those dystopian novels and all that like alternate universe stuff, Hunger Games, and you started to feel like, gosh, was there going to be like some big battle of good and evil coming up? Yeah, there's a big battle of good and evil coming up. It's going to last 5 years and we're going to win, okay? I'm serious. It's going to take 5 years and we're going to battle good and evil and we're going to win, okay? Now's a good time for me to just to pause and just say this. They want you divided, okay? So the powers that be, remember I told you about those evil rich people who are friends with the government, those powers that be, they all hang out with each other. They go to parties with each other. They're even intermarried, right? If you look at kids getting married, people getting married, and I'm talking about Democrats and Republicans who stand in front of a camera and vilify each other on the camera. That night, they're at their parties hanging out with each other, okay? That's the way Washington works. They're all friends. They're all part of the same game that's designed to hold you down. And I know that's an oversimplification of it, but they want you to be divided, because when you're divided, like for example, fear and anger bring them money. The more afraid our nation is and the more angry our nation is, the more they will make. Because look, donations are up. The last 2 months, donations are off the chart. Why? Because everyone's angry, and everyone's afraid. See, what happens is they get what they want when we're divided. And because when we're divided, we're weak, okay? And I mean divided politically, divided racially, divided socioeconomically, right? There's nothing, I mean this, there's nothing those people want more than a race war. But we don't want a race war. We love each other, man. Are you kidding me? There's not one part of me that wants a race war, and there's not one part of any of my friends of all different races that want a race war, right? I don't want a socioeconomic war from poor people fighting rich people, okay? I don't want a political war. What I want is the ability to communicate a message freely without it being censored and without people stealing my money, right? I want to see the results in people's businesses so that they can have an amazing life. I want to see a country that's actually of the people, for the people, by the people. And I want to see government leaders who aren't making millions of dollars a year on the side by screwing you over, okay? And I know that was like a little rough around the edges, but let me just tell you, we can get there, and it's going to take us about 5 years. But for you to do that, for us to do that, you need to stop looking at the news, and you need to stop being upset about things, and you need to get your message in front of your market as quickly as possible. And I'm here to tell you, it's not going to work perfectly the first time. The very first time you do a YouTube live show, the one I'm doing right now, you're going to have 2 people there. One of them is going to be your mom, okay? But you know what? Maybe 6 months later, you're going to have 200 people there. And all of a sudden, you're going to create a movement that's going to help a lot of people and create the kind of change that you want. And we sat on the sidelines. Good people sat on the sidelines for far too long. And I'm talking about everything. You don't need to get involved in the political process if you don't want to. Get involved in the business process. Get involved in the business process. Get your message out there. Make as much money as you can and keep as much as you can. Okay? Because you're going to need it to change the world. And it's going to take 5 years. It's not going to take 5 years for you to make a lot of money. It should take less than a year. If you are in 5-figure range, it should take you less than 12 months to get into 6-figure range. If you're in 6-figure range, it should take you less than 12 months to get into 7-figure range. That piece of your acceleration should happen very quickly. That's because people are looking for you right now, okay? Because 5 years from now, when the whole revolution's over and things settle down again, people are going to start to go back to being asleep. And when they're asleep, you might as well have an email list of 500,000 people, because then at least some of them won't be asleep that you can market to, okay? So the time's now, the opportunity's now, the window is open for you to do this. If you're not registered for Big Pivot, by the way, you better get your butt over there and get it in there. I think we have a coupon code, by the way, and I'm not even sure. This is me throwing, let me switch over to the other camera. This is me throwing my team. Here, let me do this. I'm gonna play this real quick. This is the lead-in bumper, and then I'm gonna sit down while I do that. Watch this, check it out. Here, this is really cool. That's pretty cool, huh? I don't know. I just like playing it. If you are an Ultimate Speaker student, you are already registered for Big Pivot. You better tell me if you're coming or not. I'm going to send you an email if you didn't. So you reply now and let us know. The website's right below you. This website, by the way, I'm going to talk about the 7 ways that you can rapidly pivot, get in front of your market. That includes reinventing to purpose, the 20% customer filter, finding your big why, working less, making more, getting paid for who you are, not for what you do or what you know. It's going to be awesome. Okay, so if you're not already there, go get your butt over there and register. And Delisa, do me a favor. Oh, great, she did it. So this is between us, all right? Check it out. The coupon code is discount. So when you go to bigpivotevent.com, type in the word discount. This is between me and you because we just decided to create this. You get $100 off. My man, Jabez Lebret says, so true, don't let them drive more wedges. We can come together from all sides and work through solving problems. That's Adler right there too, man. Look at my boy. So if you don't know Jabez, Jabez and I are longtime friends. We did an interview together on EdTalks. He also, we should do one of these shows, by the way, buddy. Jabez he's one of those guys who doesn't talk about doing things, he actually does things. And he saw a big problem in the way that we educate our world. And he and his wife started a school. It's a nonprofit. They work with underprivileged kids, girls, and give them an incredible education that they wouldn't get otherwise. And it's been a great story. He's got, like I said, one of my last summer EdTalks lives, and he talks about how he reached out to people that he wouldn't have normally reached out to, and they've been supporting us. So remember what I said, they want you divided, all right? So, Mike Semmel says, I know I'm a lifetime customer because I list you as a... This is great. This is interesting too. I mean, the whole thing about tax rates, everybody talks about taxing extra taxes on the rich people, but they're smart enough to figure out how to pay enough to their friends over in Washington to where they don't get it. So thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. That's very nice of you to say that. I think you might have been reacting to the guy that got knocked out. Thank you for that. Chris Gordon, I had to move my head up. I'm connected to several private online education systems that can help consult with this kind of information. How can I design a package to help monetize their content and make money doing it? Is that something that will be covered more thoroughly in Big Pivot? I have great consulting content, but not really a platform and a system yet. Yeah, but the biggest thing you're gonna have to figure out, Chris, is how to get, who the actual market is that you're gonna get in front of and who can pay you. Sometimes those are different than the actual people that you're serving, but we can talk a little bit more depth about that. But yeah, this is what we're gonna, in Big Pivot, the first thing we're gonna do together is you're gonna get very clear on your what, which is your purpose. What's your big purpose and what's your goal? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna build a marketing plan around that, but the marketing plan is going to be the 2020 to 2025 marketing plan, not the 2015 marketing plan. So what you get online a lot of times from people right now is I just gave you the fundamentals of a marketing plan: traffic, leads, customers, repeat customers or lifetime customers, referrals, reviews, those 6. That said, somebody teaching that right now is almost definitely teaching you what worked then, not what worked now. But part of one of the exercises we're going to do, Chris, day one, morning of day one, is a market. So once you figure out what your purpose in life is, what your goal is, the next question is the market. And sometimes who you're delivering your product to is different than who's actually going to pay you for it. In your case, it very well might be. So yes, this is exactly the kind of thing that we're doing. And by the way, Big Pivot it's agnostic in terms of business model. You could be an organic gardener or you could be a bond trader, and this stuff will work for you. So good. Thank you, Delisa. Hey, what's up? Anjana, good to see you. Thank you for jumping in. All right, so I'm going to wrap up the show today. It's so good to be back. It's been 2 weeks, man, and it feels like it's been 2 years. So, yeah, by the way, you guys should get together anyway, the two of you. You're on Facebook, so just do the thing where you can reply to the person's Facebook page. You're both watching on Facebook, so go and do that. All right, so the website's below Big Pivot. Tomorrow, on tomorrow's show, I'm going to do a discussion of copywriting, how to engage your audience and get more yeses. I'm going to build this entire day around what's new, though. It's not going to be the old 2015 version of copywriting. I'm going to show you how to get people to engage right now on your platform. The copywriting discussion will work for you on little social media blips all the way to 15 paid sales letters to videos and everything. The purpose of tomorrow is to show you. Remember what I said earlier where the whole world got this dose of fake? Well, the challenge with that as a marketer is while they're awake, all of a sudden, they're also going to be discriminating. They're going to look at you and go, I've been burned before. How do I know what she's saying is right? I'm going to talk about how to break through some of that tomorrow and really crush it. And then on Wednesday, you're not going to want to miss Jonathan Kronstadt. By the way, I don't send out emails for every show, but if you're not on my email list, if you just stop by, go to edrush.com, throw your name and email in. You're going to want to stay connected, especially for the next 3 weeks, because I'm going to be giving you some extra stuff via email that you are not going to want to miss. All right? So that is it for today's show. What's up, Rick? Jim, thank you very much. Thank you, Rick. That is so great. If it's half as good as Ultimate Speaker, you're going to walk away with more executable items. I love it, man. And by the way, some of you are asking, you can attend live or you can attend online. It's completely your choice. Right now, about a third of the attendees are attending live. And when you attend live, you get an additional half day on day 3 with me as well. So there is reason to come to Dallas if you can and if you want to. So that's it, baby. We're back. EdTalks is back. What episode number is this? Hang on a second. Let me look. This is episode, I'll mute myself, episode 49. So tomorrow's episode 50. Thanks for your time. I'll stay in chat for just a minute or two just to say, hey, welcome back to EdTalks. Remember, we are the most positive place on the planet for insanely implementable ideas. I'll see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern. In the meantime, take a little time today to dream about how you're going to change the world. And I can't wait to be your wingman as you go off and do that. I'll talk to you soon.